a brief introductory video to Chapter 5, Quadratics. We'll just be talking about solving basic quadratics by square rooting. Should be pretty quick. I want to find what value for x makes this a true statement. What number squared equals 9? Now you're going to want to jump immediately to say x equals 3 and move on, because that's pretty straightforward. But when we're solving this, we want to take a square root of both sides. And the important thing to remember is whenever you square root both sides of an equation, there's actually two solutions, a plus or a minus. X could be plus or minus 3, positive and negative 3 are both solutions. If you just gave me a 3, it's not going to get you 4. There's two solutions, positive 5 and negative 5. So here number 2, square root both sides. I get x equals plus or minus the square root of 36, which is really just positive or negative 6. Number 3, I want to get this x by itself. This x right here I want to get by itself, like I'm doing the order of operations backwards. So I start by adding a 12 to both sides. I do not want to square root first. That becomes a pretty big pain. Negative 87 plus 12 is negative 75. Divide both sides by negative 3. X squared equals 25. Now I square root both sides. Once the square is by itself, then I square root both sides. X will be positive or negative 5. Two answers. Number 4, I'll divide both sides by 8. That gives me that x squared equals 120. Then I take the square root of both sides. Now I don't actually know what the square root of 120 is, because it's not going to be a whole number. 120 isn't a perfect square. So I grab my calculator, I do the square root of 120. It tells me 10.954455115. I'm just going to go plus or minus 10.95. Nearest hundredth is fine. I shouldn't say those are equal. I should actually say those are about equal, because I'm rounding just a little bit. Okay, let's do a few more. X squared plus 10 equals 6. Purple. Well, I subtract the 10 from both sides, and I get that x squared equals negative 4. So the question is, well, what number squared can give me negative 4? This actually isn't possible. There's no real number. No real number that when squared gives me negative 4. 2 squared is 4. Negative 2 squared is also 4, because anything times itself is going to be positive. So this has no real solutions. Whenever the x squared is equal to a negative, if something squared all by itself, something squared equals a negative, there's no solutions. Here, I want to get this by itself. I think of that big parenthesis like it's a variable. I want to get that all by itself. So I start by adding 3 to both sides. That gives me x plus 4 squared equals 25. Square root both sides, and the square root over here kills the square, so these undo each other, they're inverses. And I get that x plus 4 equals plus or minus 5. You cannot forget that plus or minus. Now I still don't have the x by itself, so I'm going to make two equations where x plus 4 equals 5, and where x plus 4 equals negative 5, and I get that x equals 1, or x equals negative 9. Those are my two solutions. I can plug those in and check them pretty quick. They go. Okay, 7, we can handle 7, we can handle pretty much anything. Start by subtracting the 8. Negative 2 times x minus 6 squared equals negative 18. Divide everything by negative 2, and x minus 6 squared equals 9. Now that I've got the square all by itself, I got this by itself without any addition or multiplication in front of it. Square root both sides, and I get that x minus 6 equals plus or minus 3. So I do x minus 6 equals 3, and x minus 6 equals negative 3. I get that x equals 9, and that x equals 3. You'll notice that this right here was a negative number, but my answer was still possible. I still had two real solutions. It doesn't matter if what it's equal to is negative until the square is all by itself. At this step right here, we had a square equal to a positive, and that's what matters. That means we're still good to go. The x minus 6 squared equals positive 9, so we could do it. On this next one, I think we'll have a different issue. Subtract 2 from both sides. Negative 3 times x minus 1 squared equals 12. I divide everything by negative 3. And I get that x minus 1 squared equals negative 4. I have a square equal to a negative number. This has no real solutions. I can't go any further. If you try on your calculator, it'll give you an error. You try to square root negative 4. Thank you.